Welcome to Fueling Conversations, a sport nutrition education network podcast with Dr. James Fleming. Today's guest is Tom Coughlin, a performance nutritionist whose journey is a masterclass in persistence and self-made success. From overcoming early academic challenges to landing roles with Glasgow Warriors and the Scottish national rugby team, Tom shares how one well-timed email changed everything. He talks about his move into consultancy, building credibility on a budget, and launching Sports Nutrition Digest to support practitioners across the field. Whether you're a student, graduate or seasoned professional, this episode is full of practical insight on carving your own path in sports nutrition. Let's get into it. Hi Tom, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you on. And today we're going to go through a bit of a long form about your career. So I kind of came around Tom from just LinkedIn, and I've seen lots of kind of movement and things going on in that space. And then I kind of, as usual, just kind of did a little bit of kind of stalking, found you on there, looked at your website, found out you've done lots of cool and varied things. And I thought, what a great guest this would be to share with our kind of community. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for bringing me on. And it's funny thinking about all the different parts that you do in your role, because like from your perspective, that could be really interesting. And like from my perspective, it's just trying to find random stuff to do. So it's probably a combination of those two things.
But I think with the way the world is at the moment with sports or performance nutrition, whatever way you look at it, there is an element of there's lots of pieces of pies to potentially have, and also there's the element of got to make a living. So should we get started with kind of how you even got into this space? Like maybe take us back to education or even pre-education if it's relevant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably with a lot of the guests that you've had on, they all started off just being sporty and really interested in that space, and especially those of us that have gone into the sort of support staff roles probably weren't good enough as athletes themselves or had some sort of horrific injury that ended their sporting career. So similar story there. Like I always knew I wanted to do something within sport, and it was I actually so if we go back to like high school, I wasn't really that good at anything at all apart from doing sport. And I actually, when I applied to university the first time, I didn't get the grades to get in. And so I had to go through to college to do sports coaching, to then get an HNC, to then go into do sports science and psychology at the University of Stirling. So definitely wasn't the easiest path initially. Bit of a disappointment, and maybe thought I wasn't sort of living up to my potential or whatever. And then when I got to Stirling, sort of classic, I suppose, first couple of years of just doing sport and, just enjoying the university lifestyle. But then I did this module in third year of sports nutrition, and it was just something clicked within me. It was at a time where I was really trying to improve my own nutrition and trying to get really sporty. And it's the one time I've done the extra reading for. Thankfully, that's changed since. But yeah, I was just so interested in it, and I was like, that's what I want to do going forward. I want to do nutrition. I want to do sport. So managed to really sort of improve my grades to a point where I got an offer of master's placement down at Loughborough University for their sport and exercise nutrition course. It was SENR registered at the time, so I was like, that's definitely the one that I want to do. It was either that or Liverpool John Moores, and ended up not applying to LGMU. I was just like, right, I'm just going to go for Loughborough and see if I can get down there. So a bit of luck on that side of things. But yeah, from there, obviously did my studies, just absolutely loved it. Moved down there by myself for the year, then moved back up to Glasgow after that because my partner was finishing her degree. And when you first start off working, I actually thought I wanted to be a personal trainer because I'd done that qualification, like always into the gym and those kind of things. And it was pretty much a glorified cleaning role. When I came back up and started working as a PT, I was like, no, right, sport and elite sport is one of what I want to work in. So I managed to, I sent an email to, was it a couple of different places? I don't think it was actually. I pretty much went through the process of seeing, right, what sports teams are around in Glasgow. Obviously very football dominated, but rugby has been my passion for a long period of time. Not as a player, but more of a fan. My dad's a massive fan of the sport, so that was me. Just sort of got indoctrinated into it. And obviously Glasgow Warriors are there, so I sent the head of performance, Stuart Yule, an email saying, "Can I come in and see what you guys are getting up to?" I saw that they didn't have a nutritionist at the time. And so off the back of that email, got invited in for a meeting with Stu, and then I volunteered there for a few months. And from there, that was at the point where actually Gregor, the head coach, and Stu and a few of the other support staff were moving on to the national team.
Nice.
So that was a really good bit of timing, to be honest, because off the back of that initial 3 month voluntary placement, I then got some paid work with the national team straight away, which is, quite sort of unheard of, really, when you're first starting out in a role. I then got invited back after that sort of summer tour prep work with the national team to then be a consultant with Glasgow Warriors, and I was there for around 3 years, and then I got the lead role at Scottish Rugby, the national one. So moved across there, was there for 3 years, and then I was like, need a change of scene. Scottish Rugby had been around there for a wee while, although I am still sort of involved in some respect as a consultant with Edinburgh. But yeah, that's the sort of path to being into consultancy. And I do sometimes think, like, where would I be now if I didn't send that email right at the very start just to see what someone's up to? I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
I think it's really interesting. Again, it's like the narrative still is there, right? How can you be proactive? That story still very much resonates in the field at the moment. Like there's
Mhm.
lots of performance clubs or sports that don't have nutritionists, so there are opportunities, but often people feel daunted by that aspect
Mhm.
because you know often money is a factor behind why they don't have nutritionists. But can you give us a bit of an indication of was it a one send one kill? I sent one email and it was the first person to respond and they said yes and it was as rosy as that, or were there
Yeah,
several emails and several targets along the way?
I wish there was a lesson in like hard work and being persistent here, but unfortunately there isn't. I got really lucky, and I've had that a few times in my career. One of which I suppose is the Loughborough side of things as well. Just a one hitter quitter application to it. One of 20 people on the course that got in. Same thing with the rugby here, and
Nice.
like. I don't know. To be honest, I think most people are very open to a conversation if they've got the time. Most people are, and especially if you can identify that you're maybe solving a problem that they might have. There's so many places that don't have nutritionists. If if the question for them is a yes or no, would I like a nutritionist or would I not like a nutritionist? Most people are going to say yes. It's just the other side of it, which is the finances and
Yeah.
all the other working elements within a business that can potentially say no. But in terms of just having a conversation and offering up a bit of your time, if it works for you as an individual, then I think you can make things work for the most part.
Can we spend a little bit of time into that transition then? So you've gone into a little bit of freelance, so a little bit of kind of free work, voluntary
Mhm.
work, and then
Yeah,
you
yeah.
end up in the Scottish national team, and then you do
Mhm.
3 years in the national team. Can you give us a bit of a snippet into what that world looked like, and how you managed that as an individual nutritionist, very much in their first proper role?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think depending on the kind of team that you work with, and especially as you go up the ranks, you sort with regards to the level of the sports team, your job as a nutritionist does change, and for a lot of teams, you can fill that role of being a facilitator more than an educator, and actually, you don't necessarily need too much knowledge in terms of how to, apply certain different frameworks or whatever and work one on one with athletes. If you are filling that sort of facilitator role, you just need to sort of work hard and know what the things are that you need to do. And so that's actually quite suited to someone that is, let's say, in a more junior position or quite early on in their career. It's when you start sort of managing the other side of it, which is budgets, how the whole system operates within a wider business, looking at education for younger athletes and how that develops up the ranks. That's where you sort of need a bit more experience, really. So the first job that I did get with the national team was very much that facilitator role, and it was over the course of, let's say, a month, maybe just over a month, working like full time with the squad, essentially making sure they've got everything that they need, being available for one-on-ones if guys did want to have a little bit more of a chat and develop a bit more knowledge as to what they should do. But it was super interesting from my standpoint because it was my first real, I suppose, apart from being in with Warriors, being in with a full-time elite squad. So there was so much for me to learn as well. And I think if you've got that, growth mindset gets thrown around a lot in all sorts of places. But as long as you want to learn and you've got that mindset that you want to learn, then you can really make the most of a situation like that.
And what did you find was the one of the biggest focuses? Because you're walking in on, one of the best rugby nations in the world.
hmm
You've got established full-time professionals that are at the top of their game. How many of them, needed the extra 1%, or what were some of the key kind of messages around your nutrition support there, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just really trying to make their life as easy as possible when it comes to nutrition at that point. Because it like rugby's one of those sports, especially if you're a forward, you've got to know so much, like all the technical details about line out, scrums, attack shape, defense shape. And there's all this stuff that we don't necessarily first think about when we think rugby. We think, oh, they've got to be big and they've got to smash each other. Like really, there's all these other things, and the cognitive load on a lot of these athletes is massive. And so if you can take some of the weight off them and help them with their nutrition, be it making sure they're refueling after sessions, making sure they're making the right decisions at meal times, then that massively helps. And it also gives them a bit of confidence too. Like elite sport is a massive confidence scenario. If you've got an unconfident athlete, then it's very, very unlikely that they're going to perform. So just your presence being there, letting them know that they've got a professional supporting them in this area, doing the menus for them, is again, it's a massive weight off their shoulders.
I love that. So then if we fast forward 3 years down the line, how did you end up stepping out of that? And then what was the first bit into that kind of freelance world?
Mhm. Yeah, like I always try and tell sort of young practitioners, there's this sort of journey that you go on, which is when you first come out of studies, you start off in consultancy because there's no jobs going. And then you're just trying to get that full-time job. And then you do it for a while. And then you realize, well, the amount of work that I'm putting into it doesn't necessarily match up with how much I'm getting paid in a lot of scenarios. And it can be a massive challenge. And then you go back into consultancy, which is certainly like what my experience was. And, the role at Scottish Rugby was brilliant. It was incredibly challenging because, like there are in many sports, the support isn't necessarily there. So, I've had 350 of the male pathway athletes that were just under my single remit, and then when you're traveling full time with the national team as well, trying to do all the age grades, having presence in both pro teams as well as just the sheer operational task of budgets for everything, packing for away trips, all this kind of stuff. It was a lot, and I did struggle with the end to think, am I actually making an impact here? And I had the very open and honest conversations with the people involved at Scottish Rugby, and I just thought, look, it's not worth what I'm doing at the moment, the amount that I'm putting into it. And so decided to step away. And plus I had enough other opportunities there where I could step out into something and not go completely from something like a full-time salary to nothing. So that made the decision easier. And plus, I realized that my career was very sort of rugby focused up until that point. Yes, I'd done some work within, some small football teams or with some individual athletes, but I wanted to get more experience across the board. So it was the right decision for me and my family at that time.
I love that. And I think it's really useful for the listeners and anyone that's kind of walking into this space to see the power of you being able to say, I don't think I'm having the impact that I would like,
hmm
or that you probably would like as well. And then sometimes
hmm
if there is a clash, which is going to be natural in some cases, when funding doesn't allow, when structure doesn't
hmm
allow, when your time doesn't allow, that things have to change, right? Because otherwise things stay
Hmm.
stagnant. And we always talk about these performance environments. Well, actually having that ability and confidence in your in your kind of example to say, I think it's enough is enough is quite
Hmm.
important to listen to, because some people feel like it's it's all rosy all the time in these environments. We start doing it, we get more money, more provision, everything walks in this kind of linear fashion when actually that's not always the case. And
Yeah.
it's quite a big jump for you to have done that. It must have been quite daunting at the time, but it does seem like you had a few things bubbling up, which is obviously
Hmm.
important. Can we
Yeah.
can we walk in on, so that you've left the role, you've got a few things going on. How did you juggle working away from that salary to
Hmm.
freelance, and where do you start? Like, where do you start? I don't expect you to tell us your pricing strategy, but
Hmm.
how do you go around that? Because it feels very daunting from a student perspective, I know.
Yeah, I think it, like if you're lucky enough to have the experience of being in a full-time role, then you're starting to build credibility. So it's about really being quite upfront with that and or like positioning yourself where right you are actually the expert compared to a lot of other people around. You may not think it, and I think we're always sort of aligned to thinking that of ourselves, like, oh, do I actually know what I'm talking about or whatever? It's that sort of imposter syndrome. But,
Yeah.
if you've got a undergrad master's, you're an SENR nutritionist and you've got applied experience, that's actually quite valuable to a lot of people and you can help people. You might not be able to, you might not think it and you might think there's other people that are more experienced, but you can definitely help people. So it's about positioning yourself like that. And I was, in when I sort of handed in my notice, I had a few ideas of stuff that I wanted to try and get off the ground, or a potential approach to getting in touch with other teams or whatever. As part of my previous role, like I had some workings in with Edinburgh Rugby, and when I told them that I was leaving the role, Mark Robertson, who's head of performance, he was like, can you stay with us? And I was like, well, that certainly makes it a bit easier to take that I suppose leap maybe. I mean, I'm very lucky to have to have a partner who's my now wife, and to be able to lean on her a little bit. To be able to give me a bit of flexibility to start to grow my business in that first year was really important. And I imagine it can be really difficult if you don't have a person like that to lean on a little bit. You might have parents or whatever that you might move in with and those kind of things. But it was I was lucky in a way because I had quite a few different opportunities, and I thought, right, well, working with athletes and working with teams is something that I want to do. So I was like, right, I've got two spots that I want to try and fill as quick as possible, and I had those. One of which was Edinburgh. Another one was actually over in the USA. So I was working with them, traveling out there a little bit, and then setting up different avenues that you can generate income from. So that can be one-off consultations. How do people find you? Right, I need a website, I need to build something there. And then in the back of my mind, I had this mindset of I don't always want to be trading time for money all the time. So I need something that is scalable in the background. And so I invested quite a lot of my time in developing Sports Nutrition Digest in the background because over my career that was however many years long, I developed almost like thousands of different resources, and I'm like, there's so much IP and useful stuff here that I can other people will find this useful. So actually I can package it in a way where it can be really useful to other people, and actually it might save them a little bit of time too. So therefore they're not having to, spend hours and hours and hours developing an infographic. They can just download one for free. So that was my sort of mindset.
This sounds, I mean, I'm just listening and going, wow, like you've got a lot going on here. We could talk about each individual one, like how do you even break America with their sports dietitian kind of stranglehold a
Hmm.
little bit. But I want to spend some time on how how did you did we come to the website? Because I'm looking at a website at the moment. It's a minefield unless you pay loads of money every month to do
Hmm.
it for you.
Yeah.
And then have you always had that inclination to produce documents, and how do you refine it for a service? Because we're seeing more of that, and obviously
Hmm.
there's a big space for that. And we'll touch more on the sports nutrition digest in a minute.
Hmm.
But how did you actually go from cool, I've got loads of stuff that works for
Hmm.
me, to then go, I can scale this into a part of my business?
Yeah, I think like when you're working for yourself and like I'm total like one man band. I don't have anyone doing any other bits and I spoke to a few people about this over the past few months, which is when you've got an idea or the journey that entrepreneurs go on or sole traders or whatever you want to say, you tend to have an idea, but then you might not necessarily have the expertise or the skills to make that dream or that vision come to reality. That could be, I don't know, website design, marketing, graphic design, all these other bits. And there's so many things that you've got to do to run your own business, but you've almost got to jump in like with 2 feet. And there's so many resources online where you can learn this stuff, but it's just about, in my opinion,
Pull the trigger.
yeah, pull the trigger and go for it. You can learn so much from watching YouTube videos or randomly reading stuff online. And there's all these tools now that can really help. Like Squarespace, for example, for
Yeah,
websites is brilliant.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was when I was looking at my own website. Well, I mean, I've got a few different ones, but. I remember doing my first website on Wix way back when, which was like a personal training website that I made up, and that was back in like 2015 or whatever. So I had some basic experience in it, but I was like, right, I'm going to use Squarespace because it's got the ability to like you can code stuff and you can do CSS and all this kind of stuff. So you can literally do whatever you want. And there's all these different plugins. And these are all words or whatever that I had no idea about, but I had an idea in my mind of this is what I need the website to do in future. And I can learn that stuff and then just follow a YouTube video and then, sort of adjust it in a way. I mean, it took a long period of time, and that's sort of why I was really thankful to be able to lean on my wife, where I was able to give myself the time to then learn some stuff that would benefit me longer term.
I think it's it's one of those things that people sometimes get stuck in the, oh, it's not good enough.
Hmm.
I'm currently sitting on a bit of a website at the moment. I'm like, do I get it out? Do I get it out? Oh, but I don't know. Is it catchy enough? Are there enough
Hmm.
things in there? Am I being cheesy? Oh, I haven't got a picture of me, doing this and all these other things.
Yeah.
I suppose what we want to say to people is get it out there, right? Like often
Hmm.
people, it's about having the information so that people can find you and know what you offer. And
Yeah.
although there's places like, even with the evolution of Instagram and LinkedIn and
Hmm.
all these other great avenues, it's probably
Hmm.
still useful to have another more professional, really honed space so that we can see. And
Yeah.
when I've looked at your website, I mean, everyone should go and have a look. There's lots of bits in there, and obviously that must have evolved
Hmm.
over time,
Hmm.
because you've got everything from mentoring through to
Yeah.
Sports Nutrition Digest and so on.
Hmm.
And I guess that's the other thing, when you go to school and you go to university, you don't really get much time in how to market yourself as a brand,
Yeah.
although there's a career service at most
Hmm.
universities and they say you're welcome back, you're an
Hmm.
alumni of the university. How many people actually tap into that? And I guess
Yeah.
that's something for those that are maybe thinking about this is just go back to your uni, ask the questions,
Hmm.
there's normally, they're not going to often say no to you.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, there's obviously YouTube and all these other things, but tap into your network that you've already, invested in.
Hmm.
Is what I'd suggest. So
Yeah.
can we spend a bit of time on what you're currently doing? And I
Hmm.
see lots of movement around the Sports Nutrition Digest. So maybe we can talk about that as a starting point, and then how the new Performance Nutrition Digest has come in as well.
Yeah, for sure. So at the moment, and when you're in consultancy, there's always a handful of different things that you do. I remember chatting with Ed Tooley, who was lead nutritionist at Scottish Rugby when I was consulting with Glasgow Warriors back in the day, and he always used to say, "Never have all your eggs in one basket," because you do need to. You never know what happens in elite sport. So I've always got a handful of different things on the go. So I've got a couple of different. Primary clients that are teams. So one of which is Edinburgh Rugby. I've been working with them for the past few seasons now. Just signed a contract with British Curling as well to support them in the lead up to the Winter Olympics next year, which is really cool. I'm really looking forward to that.
Have you had a go?
Um,
Sorry to jump in, but I've just heard this the
yeah.
other day. So I heard, I think it was like League of Their Own, that on curling, there's one of the like mops you put on your foot, like the shoe
Mhm.
that's really soft and like really polished so that you slip all over the place, and the other one has
Mhm.
got grip. Have you ever had a go? It's meant to be the hardest thing ever.
I've not had a go, but that's one thing I really want to do because I want to understand the challenges that these guys have. Because it makes me a better practitioner
Yeah,
if I can
of
relate to
course.
it. So
And
yeah,
obviously,
it'll
the
be
analyst will take a
interesting.
picture of you in a video, so then you can always get you back
Exactly.
and make you accountable that way. But yeah,
Exactly.
I was thinking about that when I was listening. I thought, well, this is obviously an interesting sport from an kind of physiological perspective. And
Mhm.
when they told me about these different shoes they wear, I thought it'd
Yeah, yeah.
be funny to see Tom on the ice on that one. Sorry
Yeah,
to
I
jump
know.
in. Go on. So you got those two bits.
Got those two main clients, and then I've got a handful of individuals that I support as well. And um, I mean, you see online these like personal trainers or whatever that've got like hundreds of different clients online. I'm like, I've got no idea how you do that. So I've only ever got a max of 5 individuals that I work with because what I want to do with them, the support that I know I need to give them, that is how I can balance it with my other stuff on the go. And you know, those guys are a couple of elite sports people in there, a couple of sort of amateur athletes or sort of semi-pro athletes, and then you know some other people that might just be you know youth athletes or whatever that need a little bit of support. And these things sort of change, but I've always got those places open. And then I suppose I've done some work in the sort of industry side of things as well. We're seeing more and more people want to get into the sports nutrition industry, whether that's supplements, products, these kind of things. And actually, your expertise as a nutritionist, especially if you've got the anti-doping background as well, can be very helpful for these companies. So I do a bit of that with Move Pre-Workout that's based up here, Inform Sport and everything. So it's a massive part of why I decided to be working with them. And then I suppose from there, those are the sort of, let's say, time for money scenarios or consulting roles that I've got with Sports Nutrition Digest. So that is essentially a sports nutritionist toolkit. So infographics, you know, Jan Lemur like pioneered these way
Yeah.
back in the day with the little white men and stuff. And then Asker Yerkendrup was doing some through My Sports Science, but it was something I was doing just on PowerPoint way back in like 2015, 2016. And I've always loved like creating stuff as well. So as part of Sports Nutrition Digest, like I love designing stuff. I love making stuff look cool, but you know, I don't use Canva or anything. I just use PowerPoint. I just started designing all these slides, infographics. They could be standalone slides or they could be part of like a slide deck that you might use for presentations. And then all these other like Excel resources and stuff too. So that's what Sports Nutrition Digest is. You know, I've got stuff up there like energy expenditure calculators, hydration reports, sweat testing reports, these kind of things that you can just download, and it just saves you so much time. So yeah, essentially, like one of my ethos is never use anything once. So for example, if I got asked to do a talk with a sports team on, let's say, introduction to sports nutrition, then they'd pay me to create those slides. But then I'd probably spend a little bit more time than they would pay me for designing them to a point where actually I can reuse those slides. I can like white label them. I can then use each of the individual ones as infographics that could be, you know, 70 individual different resources. Then I can put that on Sports Nutrition Digest too, so other people can use it. It will save nutritionists time, or you know, it might be something really useful for them. So yeah, I've always had that mindset, and especially when you're working just by yourself, you need to be able to use multiple things in multiple different ways. Because if you're designing everything from scratch straight away, then you're gonna have no time for anything.
I think it's a really good bit of advice, and I think anyone that's doing an SCNR endorsed MSc, they do a big portfolio that's part of our accreditation, irrespective of
Hmm.
what university you go to. And part of that is that creating resources that are fit for purpose to help you when you try and do your practitioner
Hmm.
registration. And that's what we tell our students, like, just spend the time on this now because you can adapt this. You can tweak this to any sport. You can adapt this to
Yeah.
whatever, any athlete. Once you've got the kind of nuts and bolts in place, then it will
Hmm.
save you so much time. yeah, I think that will help us then have more time to, have the
Hmm.
build meaningful relationships with our clients and do other things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like it. I had a little look at some of the resources, and you must be a bit of a wizard on some of the Excel
Sure, it's YouTube.
formulas.
It's YouTube. Honestly, I used to see. I'm literally typing with two fingers trying to make this formula work, and then it doesn't
If
work. And I'm like, how is that not working? And then you've got to like investigate all these random formulas that are this big.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's funny.
my computer will be out the window at that point.
Yeah.
But so so, so then you've got several roles, and I guess I'm what before we move forward, actually, how did you come around the industry stuff? Because there's more and more of
Mhm.
that coming around, right? Where the
Yeah.
industry understand we want sports nutritional specialists to come
Hmm.
in and support our kind of efficacy
Hmm.
around supplements, and because that's a
Yeah.
huge space. Did
Hmm.
they come to you, or was that something that you kind of sought yourself?
Yeah, it was them that approached me, and I had a few other different sort of one-off projects that I'd do as well, and all of it was just found through my website. And again, that's one thing that like I think is really important for individuals to have a website because it's a professional thing. But if someone's going to Google you, which is the classic thing that you do if you want to know about someone, like will an Instagram or a Twitter page come up all the time? Probably not. But it's also that level of professionalism too. Like if you run your business out of Instagram, and some people do it really successfully, but like I think social media is a nice thing to do. I do it because I've got time to be able to do it. But some people sort of maybe are a bit imbalanced with that and think Instagram's going to be their savior and then put all their effort into that and they don't even have a presence on a website or whatever. And then let's say you apply for a job somewhere with an elite sports team. Are they going to really look at your Instagram? Like they might do, but like if you've got a website there that shows how credible you are as an individual, it certainly has that more sort of professional air to it as well. So that's how they found me was just through my website. And I think, again, a little bit lucky being up here. There aren't many sports nutritionists up here, and that's probably because we don't have an SENR course or a master's course up here. So you could potentially frame it as being a bit of a captive market. So when someone's like sports nutritionist Scotland, I mean, I'm like number one or number two there on Google because of my website. And that's got me loads of business over the past few years.
And how did you navigate? Because I've looked at your website and I thought this is quite an like a capturing. I think it says Scotland's number one
Mhm.
nutritionist or something like that at the start. How and you mentioned about imposter syndrome, and everything in
Mhm.
me is like, I can't write anything about
Yeah.
myself. I even hate calling myself Dr. Fleming. So how did you get around? Did you have a mentor? Did you have advice? Did you because you can't be super modest all the time because otherwise
Yeah.
people are going to just brush past you. So
Mhm.
how did you navigate that space around marketing yourself, not just the
Mhm.
website, but just marketing
Yeah.
yourself? Is that something you've developed over time, or yeah, how's that evolved?
Yeah, I think like again going from that sort of academic pathway and being the sort of reading the research or whatever and this kind of stuff, you're always taught to question things, and that can oftentimes not just refer to you questioning the research and being critical, but you can also flip that mindset on yourself. And so it's very rare that you'll see people being quite, confident in what they're doing and what they're saying. And it did really take a bit of time for me to think, actually, can I say this kind of stuff about me? But ultimately, like, if you're not doing that and it's quite bland or basic what you're saying, are you really going to attract more people to you and to want to work with you? And then actually, if you do have that and you're quite upfront saying, I'm actually really quite good at what I do, you're not doing yourself a disservice and you're not doing those people a disservice because ultimately you like the skills that you have or I have in this circumstance, you're going to really be able to help these people. And if you can get them over the line with marketing yourself in that way to the point where you're able to help them, actually that's a really positive thing to be able to do. And I oftentimes like chat with my wife or whatever and say like, what do you think of this or whatever? And she's like,
Yeah,
leave me alone. I've got my own job to do.
yeah. Can you touch on a new project of yours? So a performance nutrition digest that you'll see. Those of you probably on LinkedIn will have seen this. But yeah, can you talk to us about what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So again, like this sort of came about because when I was in the full-time role, working in sport, like you have no time for anything whatsoever. Let alone like staying on top of the research or those kind of things, or time for yourself. That's not a thing. So one thing I really missed was reading the research and staying on top of it and staying up to date with the papers. It was something that got me so interested in sports nutrition in the first place. So then when I came out of that role and into consultancy and I had a little bit more time, I was like, I'm just going to spend time reading, staying up to date with stuff. And I thought, well, if I had that issue working in elite sport, and I didn't have the time to stay on top of it, I'm pretty sure other people would be in that same similar situation. Not everyone has the time to read the research. So I was like, well, if I'm reading it, then I can summarize it and then post it online for other people to see. And so it just started off as just social media posts on Twitter and those kind of places. And then I thought, no, this is something a bit more formal, and I think it's got a bit more legs. So then I started branding it up as Performance Nutrition Digest. So it's a daily research breakdown. You've got like a 1 minute to 2 minute read of a study, goes through it. What's the study about? What did they do? What are the key findings? What's the conclusion? And just having it in that very sort of structured way. And I'm definitely not trying to say this replaces you reading the research, but it gives you a flavor of what's happening, and it might just stimulate you wanting to read that paper or find something that's really relevant. So decided to make a website, classic. And there are so many tools. So Substack is what I use for that. So I've now grown that to a pretty sizable audience over the past
Sorry to
few
jump in.
months.
Can you explain what
Yeah.
Substack is for the
Yeah.
old man here?
So it's like a sort of newsletter. I don't know. It's a bit like Squarespace for newsletters
Okay.
almost. So super simple. Tools like you can schedule posts. It's almost like another social media platform,
Mhm.
really. But it's all designed around writing. And you can do podcasts and stuff on it too. And then what I liked about it was the fact that you can make it totally free, but you've also got abilities to make some of it paid, for example. So again, it's a way of generating income. And like Performance Nutrition Digest is free. It gets posted out daily, free everywhere. But after 2 weeks, then the archive posts become a paid thing, so you can get access to it for something like £2 a month or something. It's quite reasonable, and then you can give other additional paid benefits. So it had the structure there where I thought it's probably quite a good business idea or opportunity to be able to format it in this way, because I saw like my followers growing from starting to do these daily posts. And now I get on average per month 500,000 views of it across all the different platforms. So that's across Substack, Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called. No, it's just Twitter. It's forever Twitter, Instagram, and then LinkedIn as well is massive too. So yeah, it's become
Where's your
quite a
biggest,
big thing.
where's your biggest audience, would you say?
It's probably between Twitter and LinkedIn. It's really interesting as well, posting the same sort of content in different places too, to see the kind of audiences that engage with it. For example, I know that anything regarding like performance supplementation or lifting and body composition is going to get way more views on Twitter, whereas something that is, let's say, more about elite sports, whether it's, let's say, carbohydrate strategies in elite cyclists, that's going to get way more views on LinkedIn. So yeah, it's really interesting.
And there's two questions here. Have you always protected your time? Because ultimately you're doing things here that yes, there's a paid element to it now.
Mhm.
Have you always protected your time to say, I'm gonna do a day of technically non-income generating stuff to
Mhm.
make me better practitioner? Or has there always been that monetization aspect in your head? And the second part of that would be, how do you manage what journals to pick?
Mhm.
And have you ever had challenges from authors, keyboard warriors, and so on? And how do you manage that? Because if you've got 500,000 people
Mhm.
being impacted by it in some way, there's always going to be something said, right? Or a big
Yeah.
plot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, as far as like journals or whatever, like I always just approach this. You can really overcomplicate these these business ideas, or I think like Sports Nutrition Digest probably was a bit complicated to start off with because I started doing courses and stuff like that. But nutritionists don't want courses, so I was like, right, we'll remove that aspect, keep it just purely resource based. And then when I was thinking about the newsletter, I was like, right, maybe I can do like applied practice elements in there as well. And I was like, no, super simple. Just I don't need to overcomplicate it. Just keep it really nice and easy. Something that you can tell someone in a sentence and they know exactly what you're doing. So from that standpoint, I was like, well, I started off doing social media posts because I was just searching what I was interested in. So it's always just been that for me. So there's probably some element of bias in there in terms of what I put out there, but like ultimately I want to enjoy it. And if there wasn't any sort of business element to it, I would still be doing what I'm doing because I enjoy it and I enjoy, growing something, whether it's an audience or, just growing my own knowledge in that space and being really on top of things. And then, yeah, you do get some random comments about stuff because nutrition's one of those areas. Like, you post up anything, like everyone's going to disagree with it at some point. And there's been a few sort of pushbacks. One of which is that I tend to get is people being like, "Well, actually, the study quality isn't that good." And like, I'm not trying to say this is a gold standard study because if I only posted up about gold standard studies, there'd be maybe one or two papers a month, if that, that you'd be like, "This is a definitive finding." So it's more like generating interest and saying this is the initial findings. Go and read some more about it if you want to. There's a link to the paper there. I've started getting authors reach out to me saying, "This is what I've got coming up. This is a new paper that we've got. Do you fancy looking at it?" And I always say, "Yeah, like if it's interesting, if it's cool, then yeah, definitely." And
Love it.
then I've done it a few times where I've read a few papers and been like, "That's a really odd finding in that," or there's a really one of them was about sodium, and I think there was a mistake in the paper saying grams per kilo instead of milligrams per kilo. So actually, it's been interesting going through that process, and they've actually had to make edits in the original paper because I've read them and been like, yeah, that's not right. And
Wow.
it is great as well because actually the readers point that stuff out to me as well. So yeah, it's really interesting.
And did it blow up overnight, or how long? Because for context, LinkedIn followers, how many have you got roughly?
That's a good question. I think above 5,000
So
on
not mega
LinkedIn.
mega numbers
No,
without
it's not.
being,
No, not
but
huge.
and yet you're getting consistently big impact, if you like, across multiple
Yeah.
streams.
Yeah, it's I think because like people refer to algorithms or whatever. I've got no idea. So I just post stuff up and then people share it if someone likes it. I think LinkedIn is good for that.
Yeah,
You could see it in a good or a bad way. A bad way in the fact that you might not get everything that's relevant. Same thing with Twitter.
all of them, isn't it? Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff on that that is just like horrendous, but it also works in a positive way for some of the stuff that you're doing as well. So yeah, it's really interesting.
I think it's nice that ultimately people want bite-sized chunks, right?
Mm,
Although there's always going to be people that will read as much as they possibly can from start to finish of all academic publications. There's definitely, and I've said it in previous chats I've had with people about how can we disseminate research to get biggest impact.
hmm.
And impact might be, can I get these other people to read the digest and then go into
Yeah,
it in their own go into it and explore themselves. So
yeah,
I think that's an element of academia where I think there'll be more movement there.
hmm.
How can we use videos? How can we use animations? How can we, as some people have already done in the
Yeah,
past, how can we use, graphical abstracts that we're seeing more of those sorts of things? But how
hmm.
can we actually reach the end user? And I think what
Yeah,
you're doing here is kind of helping to reach a bigger
yeah.
market, which is really good.
I think so because like people are interested in it, but there's just so many barriers in the way, whether it's financial or just having the technical training through your masters to be able to understand and get the main points away from a paper. I mean, one of my favorite modules I did was critical analysis with Kev Tipton at Sterling. Like I absolutely loved that. And again, probably one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing today.
Love that. As we just move more towards the kind of final aspect, I'm very conscious that we could talk forever. And I try and keep it to a short,
Yeah.
succinct amount of time so that people don't get lost. But for aspiring practitioners or maybe current practitioners that are in roles and they see some of the similarities in your journey in themselves, they're thinking about doing some consultancy stuff or they've already got their dipping their toes in bits. What kind of guidance would you give them or actionable steps that they could take to maybe help them in that transition?
Yeah, it's a real good question. I think one of which would be, and this can be really difficult when you're in a full-time role, but try and give yourself a little bit of space to be able to identify what it is that you want to do next and what are what are some of the tools or the strategies that you've learned in that role that can then be useful going forward. Whether like for me, it was developing all these resources, spending time trying to save myself time within that role previously. So I was like, right, I'm going to make these resources. I'm going to invest like, a day or so doing it because it's going to save me time within that role. And actually trying to build some sort of structure like that to then take out into your next role is really important. Like I always try and say as well, don't try to minimize your outgoings if you are taking that step into consultancy. And it's much better invest in saving that time and learning things yourself rather than, paying someone to make a website for you, paying someone to do graphic design for you, all these outgoings, because the barrier is then just massive. And there are enough tools and there's enough information out there to be able to do it yourself. I mean, like the running costs of all the things that I've got going on per year is like less than 500 quid.
Really?
That's it. So it's just because I tried to figure out stuff and learn things. So it actually looks like I've got this massive operation going on, but it's not. It's just all the tools I use.
It's interesting because when you look at, as I said, I'm very much in the infancy of looking at a website myself, but you look at different platforms and you can pay anywhere from £4 a month
Hmm.
to £100 a month, depending on
Yeah.
some of the functionality. And like you say, we want to try and minimize kind of those potential barriers. Have
Yeah.
you ever had anyone or lent on anyone other than maybe your wife or anyone from outside of sports nutrition who's had influence in you? Because there's very much entrepreneurial traits in what we've shared with
Hmm.
us today. So has that just come I kind of just come from you being inquisitive and working
It's
hard
just me
and
watching
loving
YouTube videos
PowerPoint. Yeah.
of people. No, I think like my dad's not involved in sport in any way. He's involved in the drinks industry, and so not necessarily chatting to him too much about strategy and stuff, but having someone there to sort of lean on for some questions every now and again is really helpful. There's the other way of looking at it, which is actually you might not need one single mentor, but actually you can learn things from every single conversation that you have from individuals. And I've started uh, projects that I do based on a single chat with someone I had once, and it doesn't necessarily have to be within your industry too. There's so many lessons that you can take from all these other different industries. It could be anything. It could be like creative agencies, and then you watch a video on that, and you're like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Actually, how can I apply that in the role or the within the skill set that I have in sports nutrition?" So everyone's almost a mentor to you if you have that kind of mindset. So yeah, I've sort of had those two balances really.
Yeah, nice, nice. And I think, yeah, I suppose it feeds into that narrative of always learning, right?
Mhm.
And not missing. Can you just to finish up? So, best bit of career advice you've had to date, or is there anything that's stuck with you? Tough question, that.
Yeah. I might lean on my wife here as well and say,
Sure.
back yourself, and do just give someone giving you the confidence to be able to take that step outside of a full-time role because you can oftentimes think this is literally my living, and like
Mhm.
this is it becomes your identity, that role, and to take a step out of that can be quite difficult. So yeah, probably just back yourself, believe in yourself, and give yourself the confidence that you can actually go out and do something.
I guess you don't want to be like paralyzed by perfection to a degree, you know,
Hmm.
like get out there and do it and get feedback from the user and then
Hmm. Yeah.
evolve and develop as you go.
Yeah, that's it. What's the worst that can happen if something goes wrong?
Yeah,
Like, isn't it? It's not going to be the end of anything. It's a really good opportunity to refine what you're doing and then make it better the next time.
love it, love it. So we finish off with some would you rather's, quick fire. So tea or coffee,
Coffee.
fruit or veg,
Oh, uh, fruit.
noodles or rice,
Rice.
pancakes or waffles.
Very good question, that one. I do like a pancake. Pancake's got to be
Oh,
pancake.
the Belgian waffle there is something else.
I know.
The final one, which I mean, I've extended it this time. It's a special one, Tom. Before it's normally one thing: apple pie or apple crumble. That shouldn't take much time. You can't be taking this much time on this answer.
No, my grandma used to make the best apple pie, so I'm going to say apple pie.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll give you that. I
Yeah,
was going to go in
yeah,
at you then, but then you said your grandma. I can't.
yeah.
I'm a crumble guy. See, Tom, thanks so much for joining me. I'm super pleased that to be able to connect and yeah, very much me coming to you to try and sort of have a quick
Oh, no
chat.
worries.
And it's really useful for I think students firstly. Obviously, that's where my bread and butter is, but to hear about someone who's been there and done it and continues to do it. I'll share your website. I keep looking at it for my inspiration, but I've only got like two headshots. Don't like them.
Yeah.
And then and yeah, I implore guys to look at the Sports Nutrition Digest and particularly Performance Nutrition Digest, which is really handy from anyone who's new to academia and or outside of academia, just to get those kind of nuggets of insight as well. So yeah, thanks for joining me.
Oh, no worries. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's been a delight being on.